Three eccentric boys who can go to any extent to save their friend. A Demogorgon that is drawn to blood, and a superpowered, bald little girl. Stranger Things is an intense mix of horror, mystery, and drama, and its final season is finally here. But do you remember what happened in the previous season? No? Then that's exactly why I'm here. Today, I brought you the recap of Stranger Things Season 1, because the true fun of Stranger Things lies in understanding each season's story. So without any delay, let's get started. Episode 1. On November 6th, 1983, in the small town of Hawkins, Indiana, USA, we see an unknown creature in a lab attacking a scientist. On the other side, we meet Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Will Byers, four boys around 12 to 13 years old, playing Dungeons and Dragons in Mike's basement. After the game, Will rides his bike home, but on the way, he encounters that strange creature. And then, Will Byers disappears. When his single mother, Joyce Byers, realizes Will is missing, she rushes to Police Chief Jim Hopper to file a report. Hopper starts the search and assures her that lost kids in a small town like this are usually found. Meanwhile, at the same lab where the attack happened, director Dr. Martin Brenner investigates a strange, living organism coming from the basement. He says the girl couldn't have gone far. Right after this, we see a small, scared girl in hospital gown sneaking into a local diner, starving. The diner owner, Benny, notices a small tattoo, 11, on her arm and realizes that her name must be 11. Benny calls social services to help her, but the phone lines are being monitored by Dr. Brenner. He sends his own agents disguised as social workers. They arrive and immediately kill Benny, but 11 escapes using her telekinetic powers. Back at Joyce's home, she receives a phone call. The moment she picks up, the phone short-circuits. Joyce becomes convinced it was Will calling her. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas are heartbroken about losing their friend, so they decide to search for Will in the woods themselves, where they unexpectedly find 11. Episode 2. Mike brings 11 home and hides her from his parents. The boys have no idea what to do next. Mike plans to pretend 11 is a runaway, so he can ask his mom for help. But 11 refuses, warning them that some very bad people are chasing her. Will's older brother, Jonathan, searches for Will by visiting their father, Lonnie, in Indianapolis, hoping Will might have gone there. But Lonnie denies it, and Jonathan leaves disappointed. Hopper leads a search party near the lab and discovers hospital gowns scattered in the woods. Meanwhile, 11 shows her powers to the boys and recognizes Will from a photograph, assuring them they can trust her. The boys also begin to believe that she can help find Will. Using the Dungeons and Dragons board, 11 explains that Will is in the Upside Down, a world beneath their world, and that a creature is hunting him. They call that creature the Demogorgon. Meanwhile, Mike's sister Nancy Wheeler and her friend Barbara Holland go to Steve Harrington's party. Jonathan, still searching, reaches near Steve's house and secretly takes pictures of the party. Joyce receives another strange call from Will, and suddenly the stereo starts playing music by itself. She sees a creature pushing through her wall. At Steve's party, Barbara sits alone by the pool, when suddenly a Demogorgon attacks her, and she vanishes. Episode 3. Barbara wakes up in the Upside Down. We see that the Upside Down is a decaying, spreading world. She tries to escape, but the Demogorgon attacks her again. On the other side, Joyce becomes convinced that Will is trying to talk to her through the light bulbs. Hopper goes to Hawkins' lab to find answers about Will's disappearance. The staff there shows him the security footage from the night Will went missing, but the footage has clearly been tampered with. This makes Hopper suspicious, and his investigation leads him to learn more about Dr. Brenner. He discovers that Brenner was involved in Project MKUltra, and that a woman named Terry Ives once accused Brenner of taking her daughter away from her. 11, meanwhile, remembers Dr. Brenner, whom she calls Papa. In the past, Brenner punished her when she refused to use her powers to harm a cat, as he instructed. At school, Steve finds out that Jonathan secretly photographed his party, so he smashes Jonathan's camera. Nancy finds Barbara's photo among those pictures, and realizes Barbara is truly missing. She goes to Steve's house looking for her and finds Barbara's car. Suddenly, Nancy encounters the Demogorgon, but she barely manages to escape. Meanwhile, Joyce paints the alphabet on her wall and strings up Christmas lights. Through those lights, Will begins communicating with her, lighting up different letters to form messages. He tells her, "I'm here." Moments later, he spells out, "Run," warning her that the Demogorgon is coming through the wall. Mike and his friends now trust 11 completely and ask her to lead them to Will. She takes them straight to Will's house, frustrating the boys. But before they can argue, they notice emergency vehicles rushing toward the quarry. When they reach the site, the authorities pull a body out of the water, and it appears to be Will's. Episode 4. Episode 4 begins with Joyce refusing to believe that the body they found is Will's. Mike feels betrayed, convinced 11 tricked him and his friends. But 11 proves that Will is still alive by making Mike hear Will's voice through his walkie-talkie. This gives the boys an idea. They can use their school's ham radio to communicate with Will more clearly using 11's powers. Meanwhile, Nancy notices something strange in Jonathan's photos, a dark figure lurking behind Barbara. Jonathan realizes it looks just like the creature his mother described, the Demogorgon. Nancy goes to the police to file a missing report for Barbara. Later, she fights with Steve, who refuses to take Barbara's disappearance seriously and is more worried about getting into trouble with his father. Hopper becomes suspicious when the coroner, the one who normally examines bodies in their town, is replaced and wasn't allowed to inspect the body. He tracks down the state trooper who found the body and forces the truth out of him. The trooper admits he was ordered to lie. The boys sneak 11 into their school so she can use the ham radio. At the same time, Joyce hears Will's voice calling from the wall of her living room. She tears down the wallpaper and sees Will trapped on the other side. 11 sees this through the radio too, Will speaking to his mother. Hopper then goes to the morgue and discovers that the body they found is fake, stuffed. He immediately realizes Dr. Brenner is behind everything. Furious, he storms into Hawkins' lab. Episode 5. Episode 5 begins with Hopper investigating inside the lab. Lab guards attack him and knock him unconscious. Meanwhile, the boys ask their science teacher, Mr. Clark, whether traveling to an alternate dimension is possible. Mr. Clark explains that, theoretically it is, but only if there is a gateway between dimensions. Hopper wakes up at home and notices a hidden microphone planted in his house. That's when he understands Joyce was right all along. The boys then use a compass to locate the gate, believing it will distort the Earth's electromagnetic field. As the boys continue their search, 11 suddenly remembers how Dr. Brenner once put her inside a sensory deprivation tank and used her telepathically to listen in on a Russian agent's conversations. During that experiment, she accidentally encountered the Demogorgon for the first time. Remembering this trauma, she secretly changes the compass direction, sending the boys off course. They soon realize it was 11's doing. Lucas sees this as betrayal, leading to a heated fight between him and Mike. When Lucas tries to attack, 11 is forced to push him away telekinetically, knocking him unconscious. Mike and Dustin try to revive him, but the moment Lucas wakes up, 11 runs away. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan team up to hunt down the Demogorgon. While searching in the woods, they discover a small gate to the Upside Down. Nancy crawls inside and accidentally attracts the creature's attention. As Jonathan searches for her from the outside, the gate begins to close. Episode 6. Episode 6 begins with Jonathan managing to pull Nancy out just in time. Back home, Nancy is too frightened to stay alone and asks Jonathan to stay with her for the night. Steve arrives to apologize to Nancy, but seeing Nancy and Jonathan together, he assumes they're dating. Elsewhere, Joyce and Hopper track down Terry Ives, who is now unable to speak or function normally and is cared for by her sister Becky. Becky tells them that Terry was part of Project MK Ultra and became pregnant during that time. Terry believes that when her daughter, Jane, was born, Dr. Brenner took her away because of her telekinetic and telepathic abilities. Nancy and Jonathan start gathering weapons to kill the Demogorgon, theorizing that the creature is attracted to blood. Steve, with some friends, begins insulting Nancy, and even mocks Jonathan's missing brother, Will. This pushes Jonathan over the edge, and he beats Steve badly. When the police intervene, Jonathan accidentally punches an officer and is arrested, and the police confiscate their weapons. Meanwhile, 11 goes into a grocery store and steals several boxes of Eggo waffles. Mike and Dustin search for her, only to be confronted by school bullies. One bully threatens to kill Dustin unless Mike jumps off a cliff. Mike jumps, but 11 arrives just in time, saving him with her powers and breaking one bully's arm. Overusing her telekinesis, she collapses and remembers how Dr. Brenner forced her to make contact with the Demogorgon, accidentally opening the gate to the Upside Down. Tearfully, she tells Mike that the monster entered their dimension because of her. Lucas, on his own, reaches Hawkins' lab and discovers that Brenner's agents know 11's location and are heading to Mike's house. Episode 7. Episode 7 begins with Lucas warning Mike through the walkie-talkie that agents are coming for 11. Mike, Dustin, and 11 flee immediately. Using her powers, 11 flips a van to block the agents, and the kids escape to an old junkyard to hide. Lucas reconciles with Mike and 11, and they all regroup. Hopper and Joyce return to the station and free Jonathan from jail. Nancy and Jonathan tell them everything they know about the Demogorgon. When the injured bully arrives at the station, Hopper learns about 11's involvement. Joyce, Hopper, Jonathan, and Nancy meet the kids at the Byers' home, where Joyce and Hopper realize 11 is actually Terry Ives's daughter, Jane. They ask 11 to use her powers to locate Will and Barbara. But 11 is too weak after saving Mike. So the group constructs their own sensory deprivation tank at the middle school to boost her powers. 11 enters the psychic void and finds Barbara's dead body, then finally locates Will alive, hiding in his backyard fort in the Upside Down. They conclude that the gate must be inside the lab's basement. Hopper and Joyce break into the lab, but are caught by security. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan sneak into the police station to retrieve their confiscated weapons. They plan to lure the Demogorgon so that Hopper and Joyce can rescue Will. In the Upside Down, the Demogorgon breaks into Will's fort. Episode 8, Season Finale. The finale begins with Hopper remembering his daughter, Sarah, who died of cancer the previous year. Hoping to save Will, Hopper reveals 11's location to Dr. Brenner in exchange for permission for him and Joyce to enter the Upside Down. Nancy and Jonathan go to the Byers' house and cut Jonathan's hand to attract the Demogorgon with blood. Steve arrives to apologize, but the Demogorgon attacks. Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan fight it and manage to set it on fire. Wounded, the Demogorgon retreats back into the Upside Down. At the middle school, 11 and the boys hide, but Dr. Brenner and his agents arrive to capture her. 11 kills several agents with her powers before collapsing from exhaustion. Brenner and his remaining men close in on the kids until the Demogorgon suddenly appears, drawn by the blood of the dead agents. It attacks Brenner and his team. In the chaos, 11 escapes with the boys. In the Upside Down, Hopper and Joyce reach the Hawkins library. They find the corpses of the Demogorgon's victims, including Barbara. Finally, they find Will unconscious, with a living tentacle down his throat. Hopper removes it and performs CPR until Will finally wakes up. Back at the school, the Demogorgon corners the boys. 11 opens her eyes, pushes the boys aside, and steps forward. With all her remaining strength, she obliterates the Demogorgon. But as the smoke clears, both the creature and 11 vanish. Will wakes up in the hospital, reunited with his family and friends. A month later, during Christmas, Nancy is back with Steve, and the Byers family celebrates together, finally happy again. But in the bathroom, Will coughs up a slug-like creature and momentarily finds himself back in the Upside Down, before everything snaps back to normal. Will quietly returns to the dinner table as if nothing happened. And that was the complete recap of Season 1. Now get ready for Season 2, because the danger of the Upside Down is far from over. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, guys.